A key for many teams to have long-term consistent success in the NHL is to consistently have lots of young talent kind of coming up through the system that can play at the NHL level and have a good impact on entry-level contracts. And in yesterday's video, we took a look at all the New York Rangers forward prospects and kind of talked about which ones could really have an impact on this team over potentially the next couple seasons here. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at the goaltenders as well as the defensemen, take a look at all the New York Rangers prospects that are goalies and defensemen, and really kind of more in-depth kind of talk about the ones that could actually make a big impact or at least somewhat of an impact at the NHL level over the next couple seasons. So if you haven't already, definitely go check out yesterday's video where we talked about the forward prospects, but now we're going to take a look at the defensemen and the goaltenders. So we'll start off here by taking a look at the New York Rangers' top goalie prospect, and that is Garand, who is currently playing for the Hartford Wolfpack in the AHL, and he is also still only 22 years old, so he may have been drafted, quite a few years ago now, a decent while ago, but he's still pretty young, only 22, and for a goaltender, that's obviously really young. I mean, goalies can take quite some time to develop into their mid to later kind of 20s, so for someone of his age there, being only 22, he still has quite a few more seasons to really kind of develop and have that time to develop before you really kind of get worried necessarily. But I think the long-term goal for Garand and the Rangers is if he can at least be a, serviceable or good kind of above average backup goaltender, I think that would be phenomenal. Or best in a case scenario, he ends up being a solid kind of starting caliber guy possibly, and the Rangers can kind of flip him at some point or have an elite backup, or they flip him at some point when he obviously ends up needing a bigger contract potentially, but that's way down the road there if he ends up making the NHL and really kind of taking some big steps. But I definitely do think this is a guy who, after having some really good seasons now with Hartford in the playoffs and now in the regular season with this one we're seeing right now from Garand, I think overall he could end up being a really solid kind of, possibly backup goaltender for the Rangers next season. With Jonathan Quick's kind of future in question on whether or not he's, possibly going to return to hockey or retire, we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what happens there. But I definitely think Garand could be someone who ends up getting a chance as that back goalie for the Rangers at some point. But is it going to be next season with him still being quite young still? Do they want him to have another kind of big season down there in Hartford? As so far this season, he's put up some really good numbers and has pretty much had by far his best regular season performance in the AHL so far in his career, where he's got a .913 save percentage, a 2.68 goals against average in 23 games. He's got 3 shutouts and a 12-7-4 record. So he's playing some pretty good hockey. They're having his by far best save percentage in the regular season, and he has been a player who has played the last few seasons in the AHL, but in the regular season for the most part has not put up the best numbers. But come playoff time, he has really kind of shown up and performed quite well. Now this season, we're seeing that kind of regular season performance come around, and those past seasons as well. That's when he's been in his early 20s, right? He's still in his early 20s, but those were the previous couple seasons there. So he was really, really young. So this is a guy who is taking some time to develop, but he's still a goalie, still only 22, and I definitely think could end up having a pretty good impact at the NHL level. We'll have to wait and see when that happens, but obviously there's no rush for him as he is still only 22 and a goalie. Then you've got Hugo Olas and Boyo, two very interesting goalie prospects as they are both about 6'7", 6'8". They're two very, very tall goalies. Boyo right now is currently playing in the ECHL and the AHL. Had a bit of a taste of both there, but mostly playing in the ECHL where he does have 22 games played for the Tulsa Oilers, having a 2.59 goals against average, a .915 save percentage, 1 shutout, a 14-4-4 record. Not bad at all. And in the AHL, 2 games played at 2.5 goals against average, a .921 save percentage, 1 shutout, and a 1-1 record. So not bad at all either. So this is someone who is obviously got that big size there at about 6'8" kind of size. Former WHL player in Western Canada. Obviously an interesting prospect there with that size. Once again, he's about 22. All 3 of these goalie prospects in the Rangers system right now, they only have 3, and all 3 of them are 22, which is kind of funny. But obviously, having that size there, which you cannot teach, is very interesting for a goalie. They're obviously seeing a guy like Ben Bishop in the past have some great success while being a very, very tall player. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Talon there, but obviously slowly developing along, but has had some really good success in the ECHL and in a limited sample size in the AHL as well. And then you've got Hugo Olas, who, like I said, also 6'8" there, around that kind of range of 6'7", 6'8", but has not done too good and had previously before this season kind of 3 back-to-back-to-back seasons where he kind of had one really good one in the kind of college level with Merrimack College, played a good season there, then took a big step back, and then took another big step back in his kind of, second season to third season there. So kind of consistently took a step back and back after each college season there, which was very disappointing to see, at least numbers-wise. And now going on to this season where he's playing, a full season of pro hockey, he's really not putting up great numbers at all, as he has 11 games played in the ECHL with Bloomington Bison, having a 3.18 goals against average, an 888 save percentage, and then with the Worcester Railers in the ECHL, 7 games played, a 2.69 goals against average, and a 909 save percentage. So still not phenomenal. Still only 22 though, and still obviously young. Got that size there, so we'll see what happens, but obviously a guy who has kind of taken some steps back the previous season, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with his development. But now let's move on to the defenseman now, because obviously there is a guy like Louis Domingue in the system, but obviously he's not really a prospect, just a okay guy to have down there at the AHL at this point. Unfortunately, for his standards, is definitely having a bad season for kind of his numbers that he normally has in the AHL. But carrying on though to the defenseman, where starting off we have Matthew Robertson. I'm honestly not really sure if he's ever going to get his chance at the NHL level with the Rangers, because he has played, now 4 seasons in the AHL with the Wolfpack starting, back in 2021, and has yet to get a chance at the NHL level in 4 seasons while playing with the Wolfpack. He's 23 years old now, turning 24 in March. Former second-round pick, though. 6'4", left-handed defenseman, putting up some decent numbers once again in the AHL. 43 games played, 16 points for a big 6'4" defenseman is not bad, but I just have not obviously seen him get a chance at the NHL level so far. He's played 4 seasons now with the Wolfpack, including this one, so maybe he does get a chance at some point if injuries happen, but I'm really not quite sure how much of an impact he's going to be able to have with the Rangers at the NHL level. Next up here, though, moving on to Erik Brannstrom. Not really a prospect, but I did want to talk about him because he is a player who is currently down with the Wolfpack, but previously with Abbotsford Canucks in the AHL this season, had 8 games played, 12 points as a defenseman. He's still in his mid-20s there. Maybe there's something there. The Rangers do have his RFA rights, this upcoming offseason when his contract does expire, so they can bring him back for fairly cheap, which is quite nice. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with him, but definitely could be a guy who gets called up at some point this season and probably would get that chance over a guy like Matthew Robertson. Next up here, we've got Jackson Dorrington, who was picked up by the Rangers in that JT Miller trade where the Rangers shipped off that first-round pick that was protected, Philip Peedle, and Victor Mancini, where the Rangers got back Erik Brannstrom, JT Miller, and prospect Jackson Dorrington, who was a decent defense prospect, about 6'2" there, left-handed shot defenseman, playing for Northeastern University, decent program, solid player. Right now is 20 years old. Has 25 games played this season, 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points. Is kind of seen as a decent kind of two-way guy, a little bit physical, plays a decent two-way game, solid defensively, can obviously produce a little bit offensively, decent puck mover it seems like. So overall, could end up being a decent defenseman down the road. Not quite sure how long his development's going to take. I haven't really, seen a whole ton of his game, obviously, with him being a fairly new prospect, but I would imagine that he's probably going to get a chance to compete for a roster spot, next season, and will probably end up, though, beginning the season with Hartford, and then maybe gets a chance at some point, next season, maybe if injuries happen, but will more than likely get a chance if he is kind of taking those steps in 2026, 2027. He'll have a real chance to possibly make that open-night roster, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, that's quite a few years down the road. Next up here, we've got Drew Fortescue, who is definitely a solid prospect as well. Just like Jackson Dorrington, left-handed guy, about 6'2" there. Obviously, Drew, though, is playing for Boston College, though, the top program pretty much in all of college hockey right now, playing alongside the Rangers' pretty much top prospect in Gabe Perreault. But Drew, very solid, more defensive, kind of shutdown defenseman, but he's putting up some pretty good point totals on a very good Boston College team, as he does have 25 games played, 9 assists, no goals, but 9 points in 25 games played for a more shutdown defensive defenseman. That is not bad at all. He plays a really good defensive game, and this is someone who also does have a pretty good puck-moving ability. Obviously, the 9 assists there are quite nice and telling of that, but if you watch him play, he does have a really nice breakout pass, a good outlet pass, smart with the puck in his own zone. So I think this is a guy who plays that really good kind of maybe second pairing game, or a really nice complementary guy to someone like Adam Fox down the road, where he can be that more defensive guy to play alongside Foxy, but also has that good kind of playmaking ability to be able to make those outlet passes and be able to make breakout passes, unlike a guy who Ryan Lindgren, who obviously has not done a great job with that. Maybe a guy Drew Fortis, you can kind of be that really good kind of pairing alongside a guy like Adam Fox. Just kind of talking there, but obviously that's definitely a possibility later down the road. So I think Drew will definitely have a chance, kind of like Jackson, to maybe compete for a spot possibly for next season. Probably won't make it right away, but then could possibly end up, taking that jump in 2026, 2027, maybe, if he really kind of takes a step there. And obviously could end up returning to college as well. That is a possibility, but my guess is he probably takes that step alongside Gabe Pro to the AHL to begin next season. Then we've got Hank Kemp here, who at this point, he is getting up there in age a bit. He is 22 years old. He is currently playing for Cornell University. He's a decent prospect, but nothing insane, really. Former 7th-round pick from quite a few drafts ago. 22 games played, 6 points, 1 goal, 5 assists. Really nothing too crazy about his game. Turning 23 in April, 6'2". We'll have to wait and see. I mean, maybe he ends up developing into something, but just not putting up any kind of crazy numbers and just not really an overall amazing prospect. So we'll have to wait and see, but probably doesn't project to be a whole lot at the NHL level. Next up here, we've got EJ Emery, the New York Rangers' most recent first-round pick. He's still only 18 years old, turning 19 in late March. Right-handed defenseman, 6'3", 185 pounds. Pretty solid player. I mean, known as a defensive defenseman, mobile guy, elite skater, elite athlete. And those are obviously the reasons, and the main ones, kind of why the Rangers would have drafted him. But there are some big question marks about his game, and that is the fact that he does not bring a ton offensively. So far this season, he has 1 point, 1 assist in 26 games played. And I don't think you need to completely panic on this prospect yet, but it's obviously not the greatest thing in the world, but he is 18 years old. He is someone who is known as a very raw prospect, someone who's going to need a lot of time to develop. So he is someone who's definitely not going to be at the NHL level in 1, 2, probably not even 3 seasons, but maybe 4 or 5 seasons down the road when he's 22, 23. Maybe that's when you really kind of see him potentially kind of take his stride there and really make an impact possibly at the NHL level. So going to be a decent amount of time with this kind of a player, but if he hits his mark there and kind of hits the potential, he's got a lot of it, so it's all about kind of putting everything together there, but he's got that size, being a right-handed defenseman, elite athlete, great skater. He has all that to his game, the great defensive ability, but it's about kind of working on his puck-moving ability and obviously the rest of his offensive game as well. But if he can work on that stuff, he could definitely be a very good player for this Rangers team at some point in the long-term future. And next up here, we've got Rasmus Larson, who is 21 years old now as he turned 21 yesterday. He is 6'3", a left-handed defenseman from Sweden, a former 5th-round pick of the Rangers back in the 2023 NHL draft. He is known as a kind of mobile offensive defenseman, but disappointingly enough, has only had 2 goals for 2 points in 28 games played so far this season as a 20-year-old, or I guess now 21-year-old pretty much, but mostly 21 so far this season, obviously. In college hockey with North Michigan University. He's got 28 games played there, only 2 goals, 2 points. Really not the greatest numbers. He's a -10, and him being known as kind of a bit of an offensive guy, decent puck mover, that kind of stuff, definitely doesn't strike you very well, I guess you could say, when you see those numbers. So as of right now, I definitely don't see him more than likely having much of an impact for the Rangers at the NHL level, but maybe things change down the road as, sometimes players definitely can be late bloomers and kind of develop as they get older into their career. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, if you like these prospect kind of videos, definitely let me know by hitting that like button and subscribe. And also, definitely comment down below your thoughts on this kind of video here. Obviously, these prospects, the goalies, the forwards from yesterday's video, the defensemen. Let me know your thoughts on kind of your favorite ones and which prospects you think could really make an impact on this New York Rangers team at some point in the somewhat near future. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one. Bye.